Yes, finally DK gets a decent update for the first time in what feels like forever, so dust your damn DK off and get it out the fucking closet, because this is your time to shine. So I'm going to go over a couple of the builds. There's a few different variations of this, what everybody's running, what I like to run, why we're running this pretty much in a general consensus, and how you can play it to have fun with it. So I'm going to go over the skills, the abilities, the gear, and a few little tips and tricks. So without further ado, let's get into the build. But just before we get into that, I just want to give a massive shout out to my boy and guild leader from Progression Addiction, Pandotai, because without him at the moment, I would have been dead in the water, because I had to test so many things to, see what was actually flowing nice. This might not be the best technically, but it plays very well. It's university friendly and it's fun. But without the guild, and specifically Pandotai, I would literally not have been able to put this build together. So thank you for the help and support. This guild is truly fucking, love and friendly. If you get in here, then they'll look after you. So look after them. But yeah, anyway, back to the build. We have on the front bar mechanical mace, Nirnhone, and mechanical axe sharpen. The reason for this, and trust me, I've tested absolutely every variation of this that you can have, is because I want to have constant uptime kill potential, so I don't want to rely on things like corrosive, so I need some pen. And I also do need the crit damage, but I don't want to heavily rely on crit damage. We're building basically into weapon damage, which I'll get to in a minute and explain why. But on DK, it makes total sense. Poisons is totally up to you, but I always beat the stam out of people before I try and beat the health out of them, so basically just try and lock them down. I'm using this because I'm using shattering rocks instead of fossilized, so I'm trying to keep up that immobilize, a bit more punishment. Plus, I don't want them running away because DKs are notoriously slow. Back bar, let me just swap that over because that's wrong. I have a ice staff on the back bar of Rallying Cry, and the reason it's an ice staff instead of a resto or a sword and board is to get the weave for the off balance proc for the whip stacks. It's a lot easier to weave the ice staff than it is to do the resto, and obviously you can't do it with the sword and board from a distance, so we've gone with the resto. So that's pretty simple, cut and dry. And again, Rallying Cry at the moment, and probably until they nerf it, is still OP as fuck. I've tried this with Wretched on the back, I've tried this with Essence on the back, I've literally tried everything, even Fast Stride on the back, and it just keeps coming back to rallying, feeling and performing the best. When it comes to the helmet and shoulders, totally up to you. This is a personal choice, but I don't want to use Balor because I feel like I'm wasting the pen if I'm using corrosive, so I don't want anything wasted. Chuden, again, I can't use this as good as it is because I don't want to waste not using spiked armor because it's great pressure and a good dot. Nibene, Roxar, they're the only two choices I keep coming back to. Nibene I'll come back to in a little while, but I think this works better with the subclassing version of this build, purely for the damage mitt. But if you want to keep the damage up and roll around and have your stam up and not run out of resources and shit, then Roxar all the way, definitely 100%. When it comes to traits for the body, we've got 3 heavy, we've got heavy helmet, heavy chest, and heavy legs. So we can have the heaviest, best returns in all the big pieces. And they're all Hakijos, so we can get the most out of them. I need to change over a few little pieces, but ideally on the little pieces, you're going to go all mag because you want to make sure that you get as much mag out of the small pieces as you can. And then with jewelry, it's a infused, and then for the mythic, I'm using Death Dealers. It's totally up to you. You can go and use mythic. I mean, not mythic, sorry, mono. But I'm not a Khajiit. I'm a dark elf, and I strongly believe, like even back in the day when we used to use things like Shackle Breaker and New Moon on DKs, they perform way better when you have high stat pools, like high mag, high stam, high and all of it just it scales differently. Certain abilities scale better off mag, certain things scale better off of raw damage. Some abilities are better off just to have a crit, on the one usage of it. But overall, I feel like DK just performs way better with high stat pools. That being said, I'm not using I'm not using Bewitched because even though I have Infinite Sustain with the way that DK plays now, I still don't like it, and I'm running Ozagas. But if you wanted to, you would get more damage, more health, and you'd be fucking machine-like if you are running this and are capable. But I'm a potato in my old age, and I prefer high regen, which I think is easier to play with. But anyway, just a quick recap: Nern Mace and Sharpened Axe. Any poisons you want, but something preferably to beat the stam out of people so they can't break free all the time. Ice Staff for your weaves, and then personally I go Roxar on this or Nibene with Trainee, Reinforced, and Impen on all the other pieces apart from the legs, which are reinforced again for high return on it. Enough of that, let's get into the CP, and I'll show you this quickly and why we've got it. So we've got Fighting Finesse because we're not trying to gank people, we're upfront face fucking people as a DK, so we want to try and get as much, and plus with backstabbing we don't get any healing out of this. At least with fighting finesse we get heals as well, and we're going to be constantly in our mechanical phase, so this works out well. Exploiter, because our off balance is how we get our whips and our combo, so you know it's an extra 10%. And again, this is why I use chains instead of wings, which I'll come back to again in a minute, but that's a flex spot. But just chains alone and exploiter is giving you 20% extra damage. So, you know, if you did want to use something like essence on the back bar instead of rallying, that's 30% extra damage. You know, and if you want to do a leap, that's another 10%, so that's 40% extra damage. You see where I'm going with this? You could put on the Malakoff ring and do another 16, that's 56% more damage, but now you're not relying on crit. There's so much opportunity with DK. Just, you know, I want to see people doing builds. Anyway, Ironclad, so that we're not getting smacked by things like spec bows and whips, and resilience for the crit resistance because we're tanky as fuck. Fortified for extra armor, sustained by suffering, so we can, you know, we're always going to have a dot on us and we don't really have a purify, so we might as well go with this. Pain's Refuge, because 1vx, this is going to stack up very quickly. And survival instincts, because again, cost reduction is amazing. Don't need anything for the green tree, that's all pointless, so we'll ignore that. Let's get into the skills and why we're rocking them. So we've got, this obviously goes up in combat, so don't look at the low tooltips, but we've got Resolving Vigor obviously on the front bar like a Chad, because we want to brawl around. This is my flex spot. You could put wings here if you want, or if you want to go more defensively, you could put it on the back bar and change a few things around, but this is where I'd either have wings or chains for extra damage, wings for extra protection. We've got Shattering Rocks because it's a great heal in combat and reduces their armor a little bit, which is always great, which then stacks up with this, you know, which we've gone with the stand version, so it's a nice dot, and we get the Fracture. And then the star of the show obviously is Flame Lash, because once you get the off balance, you get 5 whips and all of them do a massive chunk of damage and a fat heal, which when your mechanical procs allows you to go super offensive. And then the reason why I've gone with Take Flight on the front bar is so that if I do decide to go with this for harder people to kill, I've got 10% extra damage on top of all this combo with the chains, 20%, you know, so it's really good. But you can swap this around, it's totally up to you. Back bar, we've gone with red blood instead of green blood because I tested the minor vital versus the minor courage, and the courage was giving me a better heal on this build specifically. So this works out better to have a better heal for me and you if you're using this. Igneous, which is amazing now because obviously with Igneous we get a little proc on our light attack weaves. Shattered armor or spikes, whatever the fuck you want to call it, we get extra 100 damage done, and it's a much better dot than it used to be. Plus it stacks up the landslide passive, which, you know, gives you more damage. It's just amazing, much better buff than it used to not have. Again, star of the show, Heart of Flame. Now when you use this, you don't actually need to hit anybody, you can just throw it out, and obviously it does the hit after, but you get the 15% of your health, stam and mag every 2 seconds for 4 seconds, which is amazing. So, you know, you hit this and it's basically infinite sustain. You know, test it out. When you're low, just hit this, weave a heavy attack, you're back to full. Incinerate, which is much stronger now. Constantly people are just randomly dying to this. And again, Corrosive on the back bar, which we take more damage in, but this shit hits like a Destro roll. So when we do go into this, it allows us to just hold block and block cast whip into a crowd and watch people blow up and burn. The only thing I'd change about this build, if I wanted to make it a bit more offensive and not rely on like a proc like mechanical, is if you swap out and put Stoons on the front bar and put Essence on the back bar with Balorg, and you don't use Corrosive because you don't need it because you have Stoons now, and you don't use Noxious because to proc the Fracture you'll do it from a distance with your heavy attack and Ellie. You can heavy attack Ellie into a Stoons proc basically, have around 21k uptime with a leap on your pen, which is just ridiculous considering that you're not using Corrosive. But that's another build, another time. But let me just quickly recap this for you. Mechanical front, rallying back bar, Rockstar, trainee, 1 light piece, which is the rallying, so that we've got the lowest minimal pieces. Again, 3 heavy, 3 medium, 1 light, all infused on the jewelry, death dealers. Don't need mono, but if you're a Khajiit and you want to rely on crit, then I guess you could go for that. But one thing that I've got to explain quickly is with all these changes on DK, loads of them are offering us a lot more things that we didn't used to have. You know, so we're getting things like increased damage on our AoEs, which is a lot better than it used to be with the limp way they gave it to us. We get 10% extra crit damage. There's so many things now that DK have that is amazing. But one of the things that I wanted to quickly focus on was Blah, 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 blah. What even was it? I've just totally forgot. It's just slipped my mind. Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. I just completely zoned out and forgot what I was looking for. But the reason why I've gone with the Warrior Mundus on here, and I've got so much higher weapon damage and spell, and still high mag and not stam, is because weapons and abilities and all this scale differently on ESO now. It's both of your max stats. So I can stack mag higher, easier, but on DK I can stack weapon damage higher. Purely because if you go into the Draconic tree and you go down to Elder Dragon, you get minor brutality, which is just weapon damage that is buffing. So I'm going to take advantage of that and buff my weapon damage as much as I can to be able to get as much damage back on my whip and all of this shit. So I'm just going to hit this guy over here, and you can see what I'm basically looking at on my stacks. I've got a nice 9k there, a good leap, you know, the vigor's strong, and all of this will go up in combat, especially because we're using things like death dealers and we're using rockstar. So our stats are just going to continuously keep going up the whole time we're fighting. You know, already we're looking great. We've got great recovery, damage is scaling, health's great, and you know, we're not even in Cyrodiil. So I'll show you a couple of clips quickly of the subclass and build. The only reason I'd use this is because if you don't use the monomyth, you can access things like major protection a lot easier without having to sacrifice some of these other things. And as well, with mechanical, Adric's Spear offers a lot for this build because we get 12% extra damage from the passives, and we also get the extra damage in general because of minor berserk. Plus we get an easy off balance with toppling. If you don't want to use that, you can get the explosive one just as a gap closer, which still hits pretty hard. But in general, if you don't have the monomyth and want to subclass a DK a little bit with a Templar, this works very, very well. And the only things that I change out for this is, I'll just quickly go to the armor and show you, is I've got my pure DK, which I'm running now, and then the DK Pla, which the abilities are slightly different. I've got my inhale on the front bar, or Heart of Flame, whatever you want to call it now, so that I can stay offensive. And on the back bar, instead of Noxious on the front, I have Ellie Drain on the back bar. But I also have Crescent Sweep, if you notice. And I also have the Scribed Heal instead of Red Blood, which is a bit of a setback because it's not as good. But having Crescent is insane on a DK with this build, especially with all of the AoE pressure that we have. So, you know, your Inhale with your Incinerate, and then your Whip AoE, as well as your Crescent, it's just a giant explosion. And again, nothing changes with the build. It's basically the same, but because of the fact that we drop Earth and Heart, we don't have the weapon damage, so we stack into Apprentice instead to get higher spell damage. But hopefully, you go and have fun with this. And sorry for the delay, I've had a lot of shit going on. I've been speaking for about 10 minutes. My mouth is dry as fuck. So enjoy this complimentary sip of tea from an Englishman. No more dry mouth. But anyway, hope you all have a good day. And as always, peace, motherfuckers. Throw a leap.